100 grand down valuation. We got a absolutely shocking down valuation. Led us with 3 options. Find another 100k, walk away from the deal. Or option 3 was completely restart the whole finance of the project again. Valuer who understands the area and the model will see the world just completely differently than someone who maybe just does buy-to-lets all day. Your job is like the conductor of an orchestra. You need to conduct everyone. I sort of grew up thinking buy-to-let was the way to get wealthy. I'm not necessarily sure it is now. If you're in a similar situation to me, maybe in a job, thinking about the future, planning for your family, you think, oh, I'll start buying a couple of buy-to-lets. I don't think you're getting as much of the upside now. And that is one of the fundamental reasons why we opted to go for HMO.
Mark your calendars. The 2025 Property Developer Show is coming to 5 major cities across the UK, bringing the best service providers and developers together under one roof. On the 5th of March, we kick off in the first show at Milton Keynes, followed by Bristol on the 30th of April, Birmingham on the 16th of July, and then we're heading north to Manchester on the 10th of September, followed by our final stop in Newcastle upon Tyne on the 15th of October. Don't miss out on connecting with other developers, service providers, and industry leaders. Visit propertydevelopershow.co.uk to book your free ticket today. Welcome to another episode of the Property Developer Show, the podcast. Today, I'm joined by Jim Holland, who is a very good friend of mine. I'm actually really excited about this podcast episode because we often go off in tangents and have some good conversation. Jim is right at the beginning of his sort of property career in the sense of taking it to that next level. And I think Jim is a perfect example of someone that has the tenacity to continue no matter what the scenario, environment, and he's just truly passionate about property, putting out great content as well. So, Jim, I'm excited to have you on today.
Same, mate. Let's do it.
So, starting from, I suppose, the HMO that you've purchased recently.
Yes.
What did that look like in a sense of raising the money? Because I know you've got an investor in on it. And obviously, your brother, who's another fine gentleman within the property space. So, raising the money and finding the deal.
Yeah. In terms of finding the deals, it's interesting really because before I got into HMO deals, sort of the reason we got into HMOs is because we've got a buy-to-let, spent a long time looking for buy-to-lets, and the fundamental challenge I believe at the moment with buy-to-lets is you can't necessarily force the back-end GDV up enough to make the deals work. So that puts a lot of pressure on the purchase price, which is why you get a lot of the 25% below market value stuff, lots of direct to vendor stuff. I know lots of people who do that stuff. It does work. The challenge with that is it's a volume game. And when you're doing property around the job, the one thing you don't necessarily have is time. And in my mind, volume equals one thing, which is time into something. That's dropping leaflets, speaking to vendors and stuff. You need to be doing all those hard yards to find those deals. So we sort of tried a lot of that stuff and come to the conclusion we just weren't getting the volume through. So we decided at the start of this year to change our strategy, to go towards the HMO strategy. Started working with a mentor, Justin and Ray, because that strategy, the HMO strategy, is interesting in the way it takes a normal property, and this is I suppose this could spark a wider conversation around the housing problem in the UK, because broadly, as I see it, there's 2 options. You either build more or you get more out of what you got, and I think we sort of need to do both. HMOs are very much this one. They get more out of what we've already got. So you could take a 3-bed, 4-bed, 5-bed property and through a massive refurb, force the GDV up so much that the deals then start to work, which is why a lot of people around the country can make these HMO deals work by finding it on Rightmove, which is what we did. Found it on Rightmove. Once you sort of understand the floor plans and what to look for, and you've done your research on your local council sort of amenity standards, once you know all that sort of stuff, and you've got a good architect, it becomes pretty easy to find the deals. The deals are really easy to find. For example, on the Wirral, we've got a lot of terraced houses, which are really big. I know in Derby, I've been filming with some people in Derby. Properties in Derby are a lot smaller, but the reason it works there is because they tend to have generally their backyards are a lot bigger. Now, another strand to this strategy is using permitted development rights for extensions. So in Derby, for example, if you have a massive backyard, you're allowed 50% of the external space of the property, front and back. So, you can quite easily do a 6-meter extension in this massive garden. We don't have to do that where we're based because generally the properties are bigger. So in a roundabout way, to answer your question, Van and Dale is pretty easy. Rightmove was the place for that.
And then the investor side?
Yeah, in terms of the investor side, we've gone for a unique hybrid sort of approach, really, of getting a JV partner and then raising investor finance with that JV partner. The reason we've done that is we wanted to have the flexibility, because what we realized doing these deals is you sort of going into them, you have a range of outcomes. You have a sort of worst case and a best case, and a deal will fall under this range, particularly with the way we financed it with a bridge. So we'll get a pre-valuation. So we know at the front end going into this deal during conveyancing, the worst case situation for the back end GDV. Now, obviously, we want it to be a lot better than that, but we know we can lock in a worst case. Typically, at the worst cases, we are leaving, it could be 30,000, 40,000 pounds in the deal, which is where we wanted to find a JV partner who was happy to leave that money in the deal, whilst also raising private finance to be able to do sort of more of the deals at once and not fully utilising all of their money, but at the back end, leaving their money in the deal and paying the investor back. Because that's always the challenge with using investor finance, and still relatively inexperienced with that. But it's being able to leave money in the deal and pay the investor back, which is, on a buy to let, mate, unless you're buying it for pennies, it's just not happening. I don't think.
No.
I don't know what you think.
I agree. I think it's difficult to make money in buy-to-lets at the moment. I don't think it's impossible. I think there's people that are making money in buy-to-let. And I mean single units. I don't mean buying portfolios. I don't mean buying blocks of flats, because that's completely different. You can make money in that because you're buying at scale. And you get economy of scale. If you're buying individual buy-to-let properties, unless you are putting in higher loan to values and reducing your mortgage rate and increasing your profit margin that way, I don't think it's as lucrative as it once was.
As it has been.
And I think that's a bigger problem in itself from even a micro perspective in a sense of the economy, because people are paying more on rents.
Big time.
And the comparison with rents and purchase prices, rents are going like this, and for the audio listeners, right up, and property purchase prices are slowly linear, as they do anyway, but rents have shot right up in comparison, which is why massive private equity money is coming to the UK, because they know that they can maximise on the basis they've got no debt, apart from obviously equity debt within private equity. They know they can maximise the return on investment because the yields are so high, because they're not having to pay mortgage rates, which everyone else usually is within the market.
I mean, it's interesting on that. There's the sort of 2 points for me there. The first one is, if you want to get a temperature for your local market for that, join like a local Facebook renting page, and you'll see the people booting off about the price of rents that have gone up, and everyone will get on the stock grandstanding about it. But from an investor's point of view, it's really interesting, because what a lot of people don't necessarily understand is the basic economics of it. It's all supply and demand, and that is fundamentally what's going on. So that would be my advice to people. If you want to understand what's going on in your local market, join those groups, and you'll see some characters booting off about the prices of rents. Definitely, you'll see some tasty people doing that. But I think for buy to let, and this is maybe a cultural shift, maybe, I don't know if that's the right terminology, but definitely I sort of grew up thinking, buy to let was the way to get wealthy. I'm not necessarily sure it is now. If you're aspiring to go from maybe point A on the social hierarchy and you want to go to point B, it feels like buy to let used to be that. But because, like you've said there, is you can't necessarily make enough money doing it. So if you're in a similar situation to me, maybe in a job, and you're sort of thinking about the future, planning for your family, you think, I'll start buying a couple of buy to lets. I don't think you're getting as much of the upside now. And this is where it's more difficult. And like you said, if you're a private equity firm and you can come in and sweep them all up, it's great. And if you're someone who already has wealth and you want to recycle that out of the business into property, buy to let, it's never not going to be a good investment.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're on the come up and you want to start growing your wealth and building the pie, if it were, do you know what I mean? It's a challenge, and that is again one of the fundamental reasons why we opted to go for HMO, because it's just not going to get you there quick enough, I don't think.
Yeah. I think it's balancing the numbers, of course, and I think over the last decade, for whatever reason in the UK, there's just an anti-success culture that anyone that has an ounce of success is just capitalistic, greedy.
The best place to go for some of the insults is go on. Well, you can pick any property person's TikTok, but if you want to laugh, go to my TikTok and made some of the comments on there. Jesus, people just like and as well. What I've noticed is, I don't know if you've seen this. There's like sub niches of hatred within like landlords. Mm-hmm. So there's like landlords generally are pretty, there's like a disdain for them, and then like HMO landlords. Wow, people hate HMO landlords big time.
I mean, our most viewed TikTok is the amazing Wendy Whittaker-Large, who is a HMO superstar.
Yeah,
and it's purely that engagement, that post. The hook was amazing by the marketing team. But if people actually watched the whole TikTok, they'd realise that they were arguing for no apparent reason, because the hook is basically landlords are going to have to pay more HMO council tax per room, which obviously has been eradicated now. And people are like, yeah, thank God, landlords are paying more, they deserve this. And then people are having like sub-arguments within the arguments, arguing about completely different random stuff. Like the comments are just, I mean, we've got like 520,000 views on this one TikTok, and it's just purely driven by people arguing in the comments.
And it's crazy because what I see now with a lot of HMO developers, some of the properties are unbelievable. Like the quality of the houses getting pumped out in the HMO space. And again, this is where I think, it's sometimes when you're in property, you think everyone's in it and everyone loves it like you do, and everyone's sort of in the space, knows everyone doing it. And it's not the case. And I think if you was to speak to someone who wasn't in the space about HMOs, they probably have the stereotype of a HMO of probably 25 years ago. It's some landlord who's probably from down south, doesn't really necessarily care about people in the area or the standard of the accommodation. They are just trying to squeeze the lemon out of it. Mm-hmm. But again, like back to a Buffett Munger thing, it's about incentives. And a lot of the HMO investors I know, they all want good tenants to be there for a long time, and they want a good solid asset, which is predicated on the fact they're going to put a lot of time and money into it to do it to a high standard, because there's more HMOs entering the market, you need to set yourself above that, which ultimately, like any business, it's down to your product. You need to have a good product.
Of course.
So back to that incentive thing, but I don't think that there's just something about the property market where like people, that side of business just escapes people because it's where people live. I'm not sure what we as the industry can do to change that. I'm not sure. I don't know.
I think it's a culture thing, isn't it? I think it's compounded by the government's view on...
Yeah, they don't help.
And the media as well. The media know. And look at our biggest TikTok. It's driven by hate. So why wouldn't a media outlet look at that as an engaging topic to talk about and to make it into what it isn't, even though it's just for the views? Because that's what we all know media is about. It's about views and clicks and eyeballs, engagement. So it's like a self-prophesizing thing, because it's just a whirlwind of misinformation and narrow-mindedness from the people that often don't fully understand what they're arguing about, which is basically TikTok in a nutshell.
TikTok summarized by Scott.
Exactly. But I think I don't think we can change it really. I think it's just something that as a landlord, entrepreneur, whatever you want to call it, it's going to be something that you have to work towards if that's the outcome that you want.
Yeah.
Or it's going to go completely in the other direction, which is literally the market is going to be run and operated by the big banks and private equity.
Yeah, and this is the again back to maybe people not understanding the market, is that's the alternative. Is like if this happens and there isn't local developers, smaller scale developers, I'll use that term, they will still be doing multi-million-pound projects, but smaller scale developers, if they're not there, someone fills that void, and it's normally these a big massive corporation, or like John Lewis and Lloyd's. There's been loads of articles recently about them buying loads of residential housing stock because, again, like you said, people generally are bullish on our property market because we've got a lot of the history and stuff like that.
And I can almost guarantee that you'd rather have Jim as your landlord than
Lloyd's Bank. Yeah, because they don't care, mate.
Literally, they don't. And that's the sad thing, though. But I think people tend to not know what they, or don't know what they don't know. And I think people are going to push the market in that direction, and more corporate landlords it's going to be more of a thing than it is in terms of like that mainstream knowledge of what's actually going on in the market.
Yeah. And you know what? Like sometimes it's back to that like stoic thing of the dichotomy of control. It's like, you can sit there and think about all this, the X and the Y's and the Z's, but can you control it? No. What can you control? Control what deals you're doing, the spec you do it. And because sometimes you can get really theoretical about stuff and end up down rabbit holes and do mental gymnastics about loads of different stuff and which way, that way, this way. And, I have a belief, if you're trying to go out there, provide people with good houses and you want to make money to change your life, I think that's a net positive, is my opinion. Definitely.
I agree. Just jumping back to then the first HMO deal.
Yes.
What sort of challenges have you sort of faced on your first HMO? So
the biggest challenge to date was definitely the down valuation on the pre-val. Mm-hmm. So to just sort of talk people through the process of that, because the finance for this deal, like I said previously, was joint venture, and then at that stage, we hadn't raised any investor finance because we didn't have to. And then we got the pre-valuation. Now, the pre-valuation is a really important part of the process when you're using bridging finance and development finance. So again, I'll explain them, because I always sort of thought I knew what bridging and development finance was, but until you actually start, lending those big sums of money, then you start to actually realize what they are. So bridging it's basically a bridge to get you from A to B to be able to purchase property fully outright in cash. Mm-hmm. So you might put a 30% deposit down, get a bridge for the rest of the 70%, but you can buy the property completely outright. So there's sort of phase one. So you get the bridge to purchase the property completely outright. So you own it, and typically the bridge will be for 12 months and you'll pay, X percent per month interest for that bridge. And then on top of that, what a lot of HMO developers do is get development finance. So you can get a thing called, you can get 100% development finance. Now, again, I thought I knew how this worked, and I didn't, because I was like, 100%, that's sound. You can just do loads of stuff at once then, can't you? But it doesn't necessarily work like that. Mm-hmm. And you need to have sort of phase one of the build cash in the bank. Mm-hmm. So let's say you're doing a £150,000 HMO conversion to a 6-bed, and you're using development finance, like we are. In order to start your builder going, you need to have maybe 10 to 20% of that in the bank, and this will vary from builder to builder, how much they'll want up front for the builder to actually start the rip out. So you pay for that money out of your bank accounts, but then QS comes and visits site for your first site visit, and then you can he'll go around with his clipboard and you'll be like, that's done. And then you'll sort of put your builder's first, quote for phase one in, and then the development finance company will then pay you that money back. So you sort of need it in lieu type of thing. Again, didn't really understand that. Sort of got into it. Just 100%, that's sound. You can just do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Again, not really the case. So I sort of gone on a bit of a tangent there about bridging and development finance. But the reason you need a pre-valuation is because, rightfully so, Mr. Big Bank, who's going to lend you the bridge and the development finance, wants to get an idea of what the GDV is going to be down the line. And for us, going through this process, it's really interesting because it's sort of like, it gives you a different methodology when we now approach deals. Like, we spoke to a couple of people about maybe doing deals in cash, and we're still of the opinion we'd still like to get a pre-valuation, even if we're doing a cash, and you don't necessarily have to with cash because, you've not got a bank necessarily wanting to know what the GDV is going to be at the back end. But the thing I've come to learn, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, with any market, with any business, with actually anything in your life, what you need most of the time is certainty. Even if it's a bad situation, you can deal with certainty. If you've got no certainty, that is so difficult to operate in, a lack of certainty.
Welcome to property.
And this is exactly, this is the game. You choose the wrong game, but that's the thing. So where we can see chances where we can create certainty, again, given us our range. So if we get our pre-valuation done and we know we have a lower limit of our GDV range, that's created some certainty for us, because we know, right, the absolute worst case, it's going to be this. And if it's above that, everyone's high-fiving and going to the pub, do you know what I mean? Because you don't need to worry about going well. You do not need to spend an ounce of your energy worrying about going well, because if that happens, it's down the wacky warehouse, down the slide, everyone's buzzing.
Yeah.
But it's knowing, it's protecting the downside. So we got a absolutely shocking down valuation, $100,000 down valuation. Wow. And that was just crazy. And there's so many lessons about valuers. That is the absolute dark art of HMO investing. Mm-hmm. Because you need to find a valuer who understands the model, first of all, and understands your area, second of all. If them two are off, you are, welcome to the $100,000 down valuation club. And you know what I mean? You can go for a pint. Because we got a valuation firm out. Well, so it went to the VAS panel. Mm-hmm. And so again, for people who don't understand the process, I sort of didn't really understand. And this is the reason we got a mentor for this, is because these aren't, in hindsight, I look back now at the things I used to stress about buy-to-let and rent-to-service accommodation. I'm like, Jesus, that's zero. That's no stress compared to this. Just because of the nature of the money involved. Do you know what I mean? The sort of big numbers. So you go for your bridge, you go for your development finance, and then they will they'll say, listen, we want a pre-valuation. So then it goes to a panel of valuers. So there's a couple of different panels. There's VAS and Method are the two most well-known. And then they basically send out this job to all the valuers in the area. And then you normally get a list of 3 that come back. And again, this is something I've not really understood, is you're paying for the pre-valuation, but don't get to pick who the valuer is. But I don't know, maybe there's something dodgy going on there. I don't know. But anyway, you get 3 people on a list, and then you have to pick from one of those 3 people. Now, we'd done a lot of research on different valuers, spoke to a lot of other good people in our network about these valuers. Sort of went in on one, had seen a couple of valuation reports they'd done in our area, and it wasn't a million miles away from the sort of numbers we were getting out. In terms of the gross yield for the Wirral. We met the valuer on site, and it was just it just not looking good, bruv. We spoke to her, and we sort of said, do you value many HMOs? And she was like, well, not really. So I was like, oh God. And I was like, do you sort of value much stuff on the Wirral? A couple of years ago was the last time I'd done it. So we were just like, oh my God, this is not going good. But you sort of then in the realms of, you only had 3 options anyway. And believe it or not, out of the 3, this was the best of the 3, because the other 2, we knew someone in Warrington who'd got absolutely stung by one of the other valuation firms.
It's a complete luck of the draw, really.
And this is what I mean about being a dark art. It is because, again, back to the control thing. Like you've just said, control and certainty, 2 words I've just spent 5 minutes chatting about. You have neither of them in this project, which you're going to potentially spend £300,000 plus.
You have to embrace that in property, and you have to build, which is why your purchase price is so important, because you have to build margin into other people's error of judgment, situations that they create that are out of your control. I mean, if you look at anything within property, it is, you're in the hands of other people.
Yeah, professionals as well.
At every step, estate agent, vendor, buyer, solicitors, lenders, surveyors, planning officers, tenants. Literally everything is reliant on other people doing what needs to be done.
Yeah.
And I think if you are in property, I think that's what puts most people off, is that uncertainty, the stress of uncertainty.
And this is what me and Dan always try and say to each other a lot of the time when it gets super stressful is like that you need to flip it and say that's where the opportunity is, because that's where a lot of people either can't ride the risk out, don't like it, it's too complicated, it's too X, it's too Y, it's too Z. But when you go through it, yeah, it's definitely puts hairs on your chest.
You have to be comfortable with approaching the abyss, looking over the side and saying that's what can happen.
Yeah.
But also keeping a level head to say, right, well, where are the exits? What do I need to do to mitigate that?
Yeah, and you know what's an interesting reframe on that? I sort of think about this like I like going skiing. I'm not a very good skier, but I've been at the top of like a black run before. And if I stand there and look at it for too long, I will just talk myself out of it. So it's like I need to go. I need to look at it, but then I just need to get on it. And then once you're on it and in it, you're sort of in the game then. And that's the sort of thing, you know, I'd say to people who are thinking about getting involved, it's like there is a cost to not doing stuff as well. Mm-hmm. And you don't necessarily bake that cost. You maybe only find that cost out however many years down the line. Mm-hmm. And the challenge with that is you can't get the time back. And the time's the big boy. You know, you can go into a deal, make a mistake, and it, you know, it's not ideal, but as long as it doesn't kill you or bankrupt you or whatever, you know, you will learn from it. And this is what happened with us on this GDV, because 100k down valuation, it broadly led us with three options. It was either find another 100 grand, and we would have been leaving stupid amounts of money in the deal, and it just wouldn't have been, you know, a viable deal. Mm-hmm. Option two was walk away from the deal, and we pumped circa up until this stage maybe 8 grand into the deal with the architects and, you know, different other professionals and stuff like that. And again, that's back to the risk and the control thing. You know, going into these HMO projects, you sort of have to take that risk on and be like, you know, we have probably 5 to 10k, which we have to be okay with losing, because during the conveyancing process, something might happen which kicks you out of bed. And, you know, I'm sure I'll be back on this podcast in a couple of years when we've gone through planning permission, you know, with a lot more grey hair and more eye bags. And, you know, that's exactly the same thing. Yeah. Going through planning is like, it's a risk. And, you know, circling all the way back to our conversation about the housing problem is, you know, the governments aren't on developers' side with this stuff. Mm-hmm. And you can't have it every which way. Like, you know, developers want certainty. And in my opinion, it's the government's job to help deliver them that certainty in these situations. And nobody's going to do anything where they're not going to make money. It's just not going to happen. No. And that, yeah, sort of gone off tangent a little bit there. But so options were find another 100k, and deal would have been like an absolute stinker. Option two is like go to JV partner and tell him we've essentially wasted, you know, 8 grand. Or option three was completely restart the whole finance of the project again. Different broker, different lender, most importantly, different valuer and different valuation. So we did that. We found a broker who operates in the Northwest, knows the area. Went to him initially with our sort of thesis on what we thought the deal would be worth, saying this is what, you know, done our research, this is what we think. Do you think this is ridiculous? And he was like, no, not ridiculous. You just need to make sure you get the right valuer. So did that, got new lending lined up, and then got the second valuation done. And again, you know, that's another set of valuation fees you have to pay for, which again will leave more money in the deal. But that's back to the cost of inaction. You know what I mean? You need to learn these things. Definitely need to learn these things. Did that. Second valuation come back, and you know that with the second valuation was £70,000 higher than the first one. So that again, that's back to the, you know, the dark art. You know, valuer who understands the area and the model will see the world just completely differently than someone who maybe just does buy-to-lets all day. Mm-hmm. From a business point of view, that is a point of risk, like you said, and control. You know, would you ideally have a business where one of the key linchpins of the business was that sort of process? Almost certainly not. That's how the property market works. But
that's on the basis that you're leveraging, though.
Completely, yeah. Plus side to that is once you've done it and you know the people, you can then start repeating the process. And you know, throughout that process, again, really stressful because it was like, we had like 3 decisions to make, which were all going to cost us, a significant amount of money to a different degree. And I can't remember who it was, but I remember reading, it was either a book or listening to a podcast. And this guy was like, most of the problems are a who, not a how. And that was our problem. It's just we got the wrong person to do the valuation.
Yep.
And you get the right person to do the valuation. Sorry. The world's like, the sun's shining, birds are chirping, everything's good. And we just have to remind ourselves of that. It's always a who question, and that's true for lots of different situations in property. You might be in a complicated JV situation and the who might be an accountant.
Mm-hmm.
He'll be able to give you the actual, A, B, and C to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It might be a, different way of doing the finance or an investor or whatever. There is always a way. There's someone else who's done it and been through worse.
Mm-hmm. Just very quickly interrupting this episode, have you got a property deal in mind? Want to build or grow your portfolio but unsure how to obtain funding? No problem. At Roma Finance, they love to lend. The borrower first approach means Roma deliver flexible, tailored solutions that accommodate the diverse needs and experience of developers across residential and commercial projects. With a flexible criteria, Roma take time to understand each borrower's unique circumstances. Roma's attentive team are always equipped to handle and take on your requests. They will guide and support you throughout the property journey. Colleagues and customer relations are the beating heart of their business. Don't forget to explore Roma's website, romafinance.co.uk, for helpful resources, including articles and case studies to guide your financial decisions. Remember, Roma Finance love to lend. Your property goals are only a call or email away. Now back to the episode.
There's definitely pros and cons to it because it's not all, networking events and hotels high-fiving each other and everyone's having a great time. It's, it is super stressful and there is challenges and, I'm not saying there shouldn't be challenges or it shouldn't be difficult. It should be because, we're all trying to achieve something. But it's just maybe when you go into it, you don't quite realize how hard it is. And, maybe that's just human nature. If you did, would you do it? Maybe not. But does it matter when you're doing it? Probably not. And that's a challenge. And that's why I know you do as well. I'm big sort of history guy. And I find that sort of stuff helps me because people have been through some honking stuff in history. And you just think fundamentally when you break it down, what am I trying to do? Trying to build a house, trying to build a nice house in a good area for people to live in. And it's going to be good. Do you know what I mean? It's going to be high quality. I'm not making the atom bomb or, I wasn't fighting World War II, you know what I mean? I wasn't doing anything that is literally life and death.
Mm-hmm.
So I find that stuff helps me a lot because it can get on top of you. Definitely can get on top of you.
Yeah. I think it's tenacity, isn't it, to keep going? It's that, I think you've got to have that underlying passion, which you do have. And I think which is why I said in your intro, you are the reality of what property investing is. Yeah. It's not like financially free in 7 days.
No. It's
not financially free in 30 days. It's not, I've made £15 million in my first year and I've got a portfolio that I only own 1% of. You are the process. The process is buy to let, spinning things, growing your personal brand around actually working a job full time, investing in your first property, shit hits the fan in multiple ways that you never even foresaw. You learn from those mistakes. Whilst you're in the trench, it is absolutely horrendous and you think the world is going to end. But then 12 months, when I've got you on the podcast again in 12 months time, you'll look back and think, right, okay, that's quite funny that I was behaving in that way. And this is what I learned and this is what I'm doing now. And this is how the value that we use and this is how we're doing this. And that is the process. And there's no way to cheat that process if you... there are anomalies to that. There 100% are anomalies to that.
Yeah, that's just like maths though, isn't it? There's always going to be someone,
But the average, if you want to call it that, I'm not calling you average because you're above average in most regards, and I fall within this category, it's just 1% a day.
Yeah, all the time, all the time. And you know what, I've spoke to a lot of people around this sort of stuff, and I don't know, it's difficult when you're going through something like that, how you truly know how that serves you, because you're still sort of like, if you think about like a camera lens to do with like aperture, it's like, it's still super zoomed in. And you don't know, like long term, over the next like 20 deals, this down value, this down valuation on the pre-val might be the best thing that happens to us because it unlocks the next 20 deals for us. But like at the time, you just don't see that because you're like living it and you're on social media and you're like, oh, you know, thingy round there's got like, you know, another deal accepted. It's got this, it's got that. And, you know, it's back to that thing of always comparing yourself on social media. But I
mean, it's, false economy.
Yeah.
Because I've been in the industry now, like on the social media front, for probably 4 or 5 years now. And I've seen a pattern starting to occur with certain people that seem like they're absolutely flying. Everything's amazing. Lamborghinis, great. Loads of cars.
Dubai, let's go.
Dubai, that's usually a tick box. Millions and millions of pounds worth of properties or deals, this, that and the other. 3 years later, comes out committing fraud.
Yeah.
Ripping people off, owes people money. Did a dodgy deal. Over leveraged, can't sell the portfolio. Things are starting to... And the ones that are consistent to turn up in terms of investing, slowly catch your monkey, often don't hear about them on social media. They're just sort of edging towards that.
Taking along,
They're the ones that are super successful now that I've been fortunate enough to keep in touch with. But the ones that often shouting the loudest are often doing the least because they're just sharing utter nonsense. And because they then set this precedent of trying to keep up with what they've already created on social media, they make terrible mistakes in terms of the decisions that they make for the business. They rip people off, they create a Ponzi without even realizing. And I've seen it happen more than I'd like to say, sadly.
Yeah, and you know, I've seen it sort of from the outside with the sort of training stuff as well. And you know, people are getting bored. You know, they'll get a spot on stage and then they'll start presenting stuff, and it's just like I tell you what, like this might be like controversial. I don't know, but a lot of the people who I see and spend time with in property who are doing a lot of stuff don't go to networking events. Right. And that might seem, I don't know, because when you get started, you watch the YouTube, you read the books and it's all go networking, go here, go there, go there. And the sort of cynic in me is like, oh, well, funny enough, all of the, the person writing the book has a networking franchise that has run across the country. You come to my event. And, I've met some really good people networking, but most of the time, like the people are just busy. They're just doing stuff. They're just at it, doing it. And I think it's sort of back to that, isn't it? Like people are busy cracking on with what they want to do, growing the portfolio, not on a stage, trying to sell the dream to other people. And, then there's the whole training thing with property, which,
is a whole episode in itself.
It is, yeah. It is, yeah. Definitely is. Yeah, it definitely is.
So looping back to first deal then, which obviously you're still in the trenches.
Yes.
What, as your kind of state of mind, if you want to call it that, currently, what things are you already kind of seeing that you'd wish you'd done differently?
Definitely local broker who should unlock the door to a local valuer. Definitely. Good relationship with
where are you up to? Just interrupting with the refurb at the moment.
So we've started the rip out. We've started the rip out phase. That should be carrying on after the new year for us starting the extension and the dormer. Definitely broker and valuer, two key ones. Getting to know a good architect is key. I think and you might have more insight in this, having gone through planning or in planning at the moment, is because what we're doing is C3 to C4, so 6 beds, so no planning permission needed. So we're getting an architect in to do the drawings for building control and that sort of stuff, and for the builders, but we're not actually putting a planning app in. Now that changes because we've been doing a lot of research in our area for the 7 bed plus. And that's when stuff with architects gets super interesting, because you want an architect who's going to get you something approved. Do you know what I mean? There's no two ways about it. So again, you can maybe start doing that. And like something for us, which has been incredible, is the planning pool. You can find some major information out.
The planning portal.
Yeah. The planning pool, major information. You can find out why stuff was rejected. You can find out why councils accepted stuff. If stuff's gone to appeal. That is worth like knowing inside out in your area. Definitely worth knowing.
A dark art form as well, like knowing what the planning officers are going to decide in terms of approval or not approval.
Yeah, because we've been sort of pulling on that thread on the Wirral, and they seem to have a bit of a dance they do with people, which ultimately ends up going to appeal. And then when it goes to appeal, it goes external to the council, to someone else who will maybe look at it more objectively, and then normally approves it. But that's the thing. That's time. That's money. That's a lack of certainty, lack of clarity. You as a developer have got to sit there, sit in your hands, owning an asset or in conveyancing, because some people will offer on stuff subject to planning, won't they? And then just the whole thing just slows down, and it's slow enough already, isn't it?
And this is property.
Yeah. This is the game.
And you know what? This episode deserves views, lots of views, but it won't engage as much as 7 days finance shoot free and stuff like that, because this is the reality of property.
Yeah.
But out the back end of it, you'll create an asset that's going to pay you potentially for the remainder that you're on planet Earth.
Yeah.
And create equity, pass something down to your children. That's the upside to the downside. And I think the upside outweighs the downside, but you've got to be able to deal with the downside and have that tenacity, passion, whatever you want to call it, to
get through it.
Yeah. And I think that's the underlying score. And I've not set up a property podcast to put people off investing in property, because that would be hypocritical, the fact that I'm doing it myself.
Yeah.
I think it's just trying to bring the realities to the forefront so that people can understand what actually goes into being a successful investor. And there's a lot of heartache. Lot of
stress. and you know what? My maybe a bit of a reframe for people, particularly if you're going for these, like the HMO conversion type projects, is having, if you've got a decent corporate job or engineering job, any lender will look on you super favorably, because you will, I'm assuming a lot here, but you will normally have a really good credit score. You've got a solid job, and that just, all of that weighs in your favor. And the other key thing I've learned about maybe the development side is you don't have to be there all day, every day. Your job is like the conductor of an orchestra. You need to conduct everyone to pull towards this goal of converting a property and then renting it out. And there's loads of different professional services, like you said, involved in that. Legal team, architect, planning, HMO licensing, building control, builder, letting agents, and then you've got your tenants at the back end. And this is something, Dan is far better at this than me, but that's where, you can do that whilst still working a job. And from a risk point of view, it's a lot lower in, like I said to Dan, there's been times during this project where we face challenges, and it's like, if we were doing this full time, this would take up all of my bandwidth. My head would be spinning all the time. But the fact I could I could go to work and, I had to go and do my job. It was a different stress, and I wasn't always sat there thinking about it. Because, I suppose it's like a pie thing. If it's 100% of your time on a pie chart, you're gonna worry about it a lot. And that doesn't mean, you shouldn't do your due diligence, because you 100% should do that up front. But I suppose what I'm trying to say is it all comes back to managing stress, doesn't it? And I think definitely when you go through it, your bandwidth increases, is what I found. It's
being able to compartmentalize things, and it's there in the back of your mind. Like, the planning permission for me is a prime example of that. Like, it's there. I know it's there, but I can't focus on that, because it will affect everything else that I can
control
in my life. And there has been, a few days where it has been at the forefront of my mind, and I've been pushing it along and stressing about it a little bit. But then I get to that point where I'm like, right, I've done everything that I possibly can to push this forward. There's literally nothing I can't do. So then, it goes to the back of my mind. And that's where it will stay until I have a panic. No, I'm joking.
But
that,
I think, hard, that though.
Yeah,
hard,
100%.
hard. But particularly, I tell you where that's difficult for people who are coming from maybe in a job or have transitioned from a job. Is like in work, there's always someone else to ask, or there's always someone else to pass it to. And when you're in a business, particularly in these situations, as the developer or business owner, like the buck stops with you, and that's it. You know, you're the one getting the bridge, you're the one getting the development finance. So it's like you just have to sit with that, and like you said, you do what you can do, and you do that to the best of your ability. But then outside of that, it's like it's also out of control. Like it's with planning. When they come back to me, I'll go back to them, but like I can't do anything about it now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's like when you start, that's tough. And then like I said, I'll laugh about, you know, worrying about my buy to let. Like that's like on the sliding scale of risk is in relative terms, super low risk, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's about pushing those boundaries, isn't it? And
it's growth. Yeah,
you couldn't just go straight from ground zero to HMO, because you'd think that in between process,
it's too big.
Yeah,
it's too big of a jump.
You kind of got to like step by step edge towards more risky stuff, push the boundaries, and you'll find that perfect sort of area that you're comfortable with, and you're right, I don't really want to push past this mark because I'm comfortable and good at. And that's what a lot of people forget to do as well. They just keep going, they keep the numbers get bigger, the risk gets higher, and then it does go to shit, and then they go into liquidation and everything else sort of in between that. So I think it's a journey, isn't it? And that's what we're talking about here. And the stage that you're at is that kind of early stage that you're starting to build the HMO portfolio. It's not as straightforward as one would assume to begin with.
And back to what you said as well, but particularly with these projects, they're not, even when they're quick, they're not quick. Do you know what I mean? Because you can be in conveyancing realistically for like at least 3 months, if not 6 months. Your build can be 9 months. Do you know what I mean? So there's, you know, that's the best part of a year. And that is like, and this is interesting. I think it's Nassim Taleb talks about this with entrepreneurs, and he's like, the best entrepreneurs are like have the ability to be able to like bleed every single day for a very long time for a big payoff. And when you think about property, like all you do is spend money, and it can be months before anything comes back the other way. And psychologically, that's tough. And you know what? It must be interesting for other business owners to come into property, because like that must be so like counter what any other business is. Because if it was any other business and you'd be like, we've had this much outlay and nothing's come back, you'd be like, I'm going to call this. It's not working. But it's the nature of property, isn't it?
Money comes in, money goes out.
Yeah, and property is just money goes out.
Yeah.
For a long time, for a long time.
Pretty much. But that you've got to look at it as investing, and you're going to get that money back. It's not like, you know, putting black on route.
Yeah, the roulette table,
It's, I'm putting 10 grand into a property so I can effectively get 20 grand back.
Yeah.
And you've got to kind of look at it that way. And I think when you're moving into that kind of, I suppose, mindset, and it is a mindset to overcome money just going out constantly. Because as soon as you start investing, and particularly if you're retaining, which obviously you're doing, you never effectively see that money ever again, really. It'll just keep being churned through. Which is why I shifted my strategy over to sort of buy and sell, because I wanted to churn my capital and grow what I've got quicker. Whereas when you purchase HMO, which obviously you're doing with a JV partner, so it's not technically your capital that you're tying up, you still tie that cash up. So effectively, you run out of that capital eventually, and that stops you from doing business, creating capital, creating equity.
Which and that's something we realised that pretty early doors. So again, that's back to the who not how thing. So we need to meet another partner who is like-minded with us and connects with us and wants to scale the same way we do, which is the reason sort of in our business broadly, the split is like, I look after maybe more of the marketing side, maybe to tell people our story, and then Dan's more of the operational stuff in order to find those JV partners. And we've got some interesting stuff in the pipeline, which hopefully will come to fruition next year, all from social media, which is like, you know, I know, you know, we all, we've done it before, slagging off TikTok, but you know, TikTok is a dark place. Like there's some absolute scum on there. But there is, you know, there's massive upside to social media, and it's just, it's not going away. And the way the world is generally becoming more decentralized, it's about personalities, it's about individual creators, and it's about connecting with people on an individual basis. And that's been the biggest thing I've learned this year. Even with all the property stuff, like the story you tell yourself and other people about a situation is like, that has the biggest impact. Like, unbelievable.
People will hate you whether you do or don't, and you've just got to pick what side you want to be on. And I think that a lot of people get stuck with that, and they think too much of what other people think of them, when in reality, most people, I think, who was it, someone said to me yesterday, you will never be criticised by someone that's ahead of you.
Exactly. Yeah, because they get it. They know, like, oh mate, you're in your down valley, right? Well done, lad. Or whatever it is. Yeah. Or you're in your super like scale. And I'll tell you what, like, one of the things Justin said to me, our HMO mentor, I think it was like, must have been the first site visit we did with him, looking around one of his HMOs, and he was like, he said, because at that point I'm sure he had like 8 refurbs going on and his own house refurb as well. So he had like 9 projects going on at once. And we were sort of saying, is it stressful? And he's like, yeah, it is stressful. 100% it's stressful. But he said, having done multiple projects at once, he said, now, if I've got nothing going on, the feeling of not doing anything like freaks me out. He said he hates it. And he's like, so I would rather this stress than that stress. And I suppose, like, to loop back, and this is the sort of rationale, I've sort of had with myself many times, is like, the cost of doing nothing is expensive. And that's why the first deal, like, not saying it doesn't matter how much money you make, but the learnings will be so big that, like, the financial side of it won't matter, because, like, it's like when you first drive by yourself, when you pass your test, you have the confidence of like, oh, I've driven, do you know what I mean? And like, I've done my first deal. You just have more confidence operating. So like, yeah, if you make 10, 12, 15 grand on your first flip or whatever, that's sound, but like, you've been through the whole process now. So it's gone from theory to reality. And that's where, because there's loads of people I've met at different property stuff who are super analytical, super technical. And those people really struggle because they struggle with the lack of control of risk. And that's what kills them. And those people, like, they want to control every single downside. And the people I've noticed who do best in property they're not stupid. They're definitely not stupid. But they're not like, Oxbridge academic, like, I'm going to split the atom or whatever, sort of people. But the people who can operate at a high level, and like you said about managing the risk, can just crack on with it. Whereas there may be people who like make things super complicated and make it all like theory. They struggle because they don't like it, because it's like, what about this and what about that? And you're like, yeah, there is a lot of what ifs going into this. Like, there is a lot, but like you said, fundamentally, you break it down. It's like you're owning a house. We all know over the long term, it's going to go up. So it's what you do with it. And I think sometimes you can get wrapped up in the nuts and bolts maybe, and just the basic is you're buying something to hold it.
Yeah, definitely. 100%. I think there is a certain type of person, I think, that does particularly well. I think that's why, like, military people do really well. I think it's why IT people do really well, because they can create systems, and it's all about actionable stuff.
Actual, tangible. It's not theory. It's like,
it's delivering a project. And I think that's why you've got to have that certain, or if you don't, you partner with someone that does, and the two come together. And that's the way you sort of combat that. But you do need someone that is willing to look over the edge and go, right,
let's go.
Let's jump.
Let's go, big boy. Yeah.
Certainly. So hopefully people have got a good insight to what it's going to be like buying their first HMO.
Yeah. And the best place, little shout out, give us a follow on Instagram, Jim Holland Property. Like we said, try to give people legit insight into property investing, hopefully in a slightly amusing way with my own weird, quirky sense of humor. But yeah, because, it's tough, and, there's lots of people to speak to. Lots of people who are similar to me, just been like working class lads who've got a job and maybe saved up a little bit of money and maybe want something more for their life. Because, that's all I've wanted. It's or you wanted. Do you know what I mean? It's all, fundamentally, I think it's just it's all a vehicle for self-development, isn't it? A lot of it. And, people do that different ways. Some people do a bloody high rocks. Some people invest in property. Some people, do different stuff, don't they?
Yeah, exactly that. And bettering our life, it's not much to ask for, is it?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. No.
Who knows?
That's TikTok.
Well, yeah.
What are you saying, TikTok?
Well, fucking hell. Let's not ask TikTok.
Yeah. I'll get terrified. I got I'll tell you the best comment someone said on one of my TikTok videos is because when you're going around, like the new iPhones with the sort of 3 cameras, they have like a 0.5 view. And when you walk around the house, it's really good because you get like the wide aperture view of it. And this guy just commented on one of my videos and he said, "Man's like 5'1". I was absolutely creased because it was like some of the stuff you get on TikTok is class. It's class. And then what was the other one I made? I made a video about like one of the understairs. I was in a house and I was under the stairs and they made a joke about Harry Potter or something. Yeah, some people see. I find like the creative ones really funny, but then some people are just like
nasty.
Yeah, they're just rude. Like they're just rude.
Yeah,
which you don't like. It's definitely TikTok. Yeah, definitely. You don't get on Instagram as much and YouTube. No.
Not as much. Not as prolific as.
Not as like visceral. Do you know what I mean?
I think people have intrusive opinions.
Yeah.
And they don't mind sharing them on TikTok. But anyway. Yeah. Moving on from TikTok.
Yeah.
Nice
TikTok where it is.
Well, I apprappreciate you coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
You haven't travelled far.
I've not, no, just over the water.
Yeah.
Just over the water. I've got a question for you before we end.
Go on.
Dinner party, 5 guests. Who you having? Anyone throughout history, dead, alive?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Obviously Marcus Aurelius.
The OG.
Julius Caesar. Oof. Alexander the Great. Maybe, but I can't imagine him being too like responsive because you just think he's better than everyone else. But potentially like Genghis Khan.
Oh yeah.
But I feel like he wouldn't like fit that table very well.
There's
some big personalities.
There's a couple of egos there. Yeah. Julius Caesar and Genghis.
So he's like sub.
He's on the bench.
Yeah, if I couldn't
Genghis lad.
If I couldn't get anyone else, then
yeah, go on, come on then.
So who've I got? So
Marcus Aurelius,
Julius Caesar, Alexander the Great,
Genghis Khan's first sub. Maybe okay. I'll put a caveat on the last one. Still alive.
Okay, right.
Still alive. Let's do that. Give you a little caveat for that.
There's too many to choose from, to be fair.
Who's in your head? Who's popping out?
Obviously, like Elon, Jeff Bezos, Big Buffett. Do you know what? Randomly, 50 Cent.
50, yeah. Yeah. He's had a wild story, hasn't he?
I respect his hustle, to be fair.
Yeah, he's a grafter, isn't he?
Yeah, he's one of those that I can, no matter what format it's in, he always makes me feel like I'm not doing enough.
Yeah.
And they're obviously the people that get you to the next level.
Yeah.
That push you.
Jesus, mate, on the subject of those people.
Oh yeah, Jesus as well.
JC, main man. Birthday. There's a, have you ever listened to the Founders podcast?
I haven't,
Oh, mate, get on that. He basically breaks down like biographies and autobiographies of famous people from history. There's a couple about Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan. Jesus, mate, you listen to them and you're like, God, it's like you've been in the spa all day. Do you know what I mean? Those guys were ruthless, just like on it all the time.
I remember one story just very quickly before we close out. A story where I think the NBA players were coming back really late in Vegas. I think it was a US team.
Right.
And they were walking through the lobby at 4 a.m., 3 a.m., something like that. And Kobe Bryant comes walking through.
Been training or something.
What are you doing? He's like, I'm going to the gym.
Yeah.
And the next day, none of the guys went out. They all went to the gym in the evening rather than partied in Vegas.
Because they felt Kobe's watching.
Yeah. Because obviously he set the bar.
Yeah, set the precedent, yeah.
And people followed suit because they didn't want to be that one. They didn't
I'm not
going to
be that guy, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, to have that mentality, that's...
wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, ruthless.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. The reason I asked is because I had a feeling we'd have similar people. Like the first, mine is Marcus Aurelius, Caesar, Napoleon, Alexander the Great. they're all in mine. And I always flop between like Churchill, Duke of Wellington, those people. But if it's to say one now modern, I'd probably have Naval Ravikant, because he's a sick man. He thinks in a different way.
Maximus Decimus Meridius.
Yes, the boys. The boys.
Right. Anyway, thank you very much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me, pal.
It's been a pleasure. And we'll see you again in 12 months when the HMOs
definitely.
finish.
Yeah, definitely. With more, lots more.
Good stuff. Nice one, Jim.
Nice one.
Thank you very much for tuning in today. Hopefully you've had some value in a sense of what it's like to do that first property deal, or bigger property deal, should I say, and hopefully gives you good insight to the realities of just getting that momentum and getting started in property, because it is difficult. It's not straightforward, but if you put the time and effort in, the rewards are great. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I hope to see you again soon. As I always say, please do leave a like and review on the audio version, and do like and subscribe on YouTube. We'll see you again soon. Take care.